All right, guys, so where we are right now, remember we are talking about, so right now we're talking about job order costing, right? Order costing, okay? And we're talking about how as a product moves through the different phases, so from warehouse or storeroom to materials, and then from materials, it picks up work in process, and then so forth, it becomes finished goods. And then from finished goods, it becomes sold, right? And so right now, this is, we, in the prior video, we captured kind of this part, right? Up until here, right? And so when we were looking at this before, we looked at the fact that first we need to buy the materials or purchase the materials from our suppliers. And the way we captured that was through a debit to materials of X amount of dollars, and then a credit to accounts payable to later pay it off, right? And then a requisition for a particular job came. Remember, a requisition is nothing more than a request for materials, right? So say, for instance, we had this big job, oopsie, job number 71 on the work in process. And remember, in order to complete a job, we need some direct materials, we need some direct labor, and we also need some factory overhead, right? So we have captured direct materials and through a requisition. And so we're building, so for instance, we're building 200 guitars, right? And when we request materials, maybe maple wood, pallets of maple wood to build this guitar, we are doing a requisition. And to capture that, we're going to do a debit to work in process, because now we're putting this materials into like a blender, if you would like to think of it that way. And then our credit is to materials, and it's a credit to materials because our material account is decreasing because we're now applying it to this job. So now we have already applied direct materials to it. Now we're going to work on, in this video, direct labor, right? How do we apply direct labor to a job, right? How do we put that into the mix, right? So direct labor. So direct labor, usually what you probably have seen is when an employer works for, so shows up for work or what have you, or they're clocking in, usually we use like the electronic badge, a clock card, or in and out card, or ADP or Chronos. Maybe you're familiar with all of those systems. But the essence of it is we're trying to capture your time at work, right? The labor, right? So anyways, if I look more specifically at job order costing, this is more detailed time tracking. And what we're doing is when an employee work on an individual job, they usually use time tickets to record the amount of time they have worked on a specific job. So what does that look like here? Right? So here's a time ticket. Now remember, this is direct labor. This is the person or persons or people that are specifically working on this job. So in our last example, I say maybe 200 yellow guitars, right? So all of the people that are working on these 200 yellow guitars, they're using time tickets to allocate their time, saying, okay, this department worked on it, this department worked on it as well, okay? So hopefully that made sense to you. So for job number 71, this is the one we're looking at right here. And then in job number 72, we have two different time tickets and we have two different jobs, right? Job number 71, job number 72. Now in looking at this ticket, you know, I see their hourly rate and how many hours that they worked on it in what particular department, right? And then I see maybe job number 72, they worked on this for 8 hours or what have you, and they're getting paid $15 an hour. Not being a petty person that I am, just kidding. I would want to know, wait a minute, why is there a difference between the pay between two different departments, right? So you have the cutting department and the assembly department. They're also working on different types of guitars. Here's 20 guitars, and this is 60 guitars of different types. This is a jazz series, and this is American series, right? So me being me, I'm like, well, why they getting paid differently, right? Why they getting paid $5 more? I want to know, right? But this happens all the time, The skills necessary in the assembly department may be completely different from the cutting department, right? So we need to make sure we recognize that there's a different labor requirement, a different time requirement, so forth and so on. But what I see in this particular example, that for job number 71, the number of hours required for this job is less than the number of hours required for job number 72. And the reason I know this is for job number 71, for job number, okay, here it is. So for job number 71, there's a total of 350 hours required. However, for job number 72, there's a total of 500 hours required. In my head, that kind of makes sense in a sense, because you manufacturing 20 guitars versus 60 guitars. So I would expect it would be a little more labor intensive because you're making more. All right, so direct materials, we have already addressed that, and now we are now adding direct labor to the mix. And the way we are doing that is usually however you calculate time, right? Is the way you calculate a labor rate, I guess you would say, is the hourly rate times the number of hours they work. You multiply those together and baba boom, right? That's how you apply your direct labor. All right, so let's do an example of how this looks, or as we work through this, right? So here is my journal entry to capture applying labor to a particular job, right? So it will be a debit to work in process and a credit to wages payable, okay? All right, so what I'm gonna challenge each of you guys to do is look through this example and see, excuse me, and see if you can figure out what my journal entry would look like for this particular example. And then in the next video, I'm gonna come back. We're gonna work through this example together, and I'm gonna drink some water. And then we're gonna work through this example together, and then we're